Hello, my name is Paul Haspel. I'm an instructor in the Humanities Department, and I want to welcome you to this grammar mini-session, one of the series of mini-sessions sponsored by the Writing and Reading Center. So what is grammar anyway? Grammar is a term referring to the general set of rules governing what is considered proper expression in standard written English. That's the dictionary definition. More for your purposes, grammar is also a term that often causes some nervousness among writers at all levels. But the good news is that it is relatively easy to spot many of the most common grammatical errors that occur in written English, and with a bit of practice you can anticipate these errors and prevent them from occurring in your writing. And that'll be the focus of our mini session today. If you want to find out more, I've been teaching English at the college level for 27 years, and I've found that one of the best guides that's available for detecting and avoiding the most common grammatical errors is a book called The Elements of Style. It's a book originally published in 1959 by William Strunk Jr. and E.B. White. There are two chapters from that book, Chapter 1 on Elementary Rules of Usage, Chapter 2 on Elementary Principles of Composition. Those are both particularly helpful in regard to the kind of grammar issues we'll be talking about today. What you're going to see following in the session that's coming up is a number of important grammatical and usage-related insights from Strunk and White's book with examples. So we'll go right ahead and go to that. So the first of Strunk and White's rules is do not join independent clauses with a comma. Now, clause may be one of those words you've heard 1,000 times in English classes. What is a clause anyway? Well, a phrase is any group of words at all. But a clause, and this is the crucial distinction, is any group of words that contains a subject and a verb. An independent clause, that's a clause that can stand on its own. It's a complete sentence. It can be as short as 2 words, such as the shortest verse in the Bible, which is Jesus wept, from St. John's Gospel, chapter 11, verse 35. 2 words can be an independent clause, a complete sentence. A dependent clause, on the other hand, is a clause that cannot stand on its own, often because it has a sentence-destroying word such as a subordinating conjunction, a word like while. If you try to join 2 independent clauses without any punctuation at all, then what results is a run-on sentence. And you're going to be meeting these 2 people, Attila and Dorottya, in the sentences that follow. Those are common Hungarian names. I lived in Hungary for a while, so bear with me. What you see before you, Attila wept, Dorottya consoled him, is a run-on sentence. 2 independent clauses joined without any punctuation at all. It doesn't work. It sounds as if one person is weeping another person. It makes no sense at all. If you try to join 2 independent clauses with a comma, then what results is a comma splice. This is something I see more often. A lot of student writers seem to realize you can't just run 2 independent clauses together, so they put a comma in and they think that that's enough. Unfortunately, it's not. It's a comma splice. It's grammatically not correct. Now, if you want to find correct ways to join independent clauses together, there are several ways to do that. One is you can use a sentence destroyer or a subordinating conjunction to make the first independent clause a dependent clause. So, while Attila wept, comma, Dorottya consoled him. That's fine. You can also join the 2 clauses with a coordinating conjunction. Attila wept and Dorottya consoled him. That's fine too. You can join the 2 clauses with a semicolon. Attila wept, semicolon. Dorottya consoled him. That works. And then finally, you can make the 2 clauses into separate sentences. Attila wept, period, full stop. Dorottya consoled him. Any of those would be just fine. Now, Strunk and White's next rule we're going to talk about in this mini session is do not break sentences in 2. In other words, do not use periods for commas. And this, too, is one of the most common grammatical problems that I see in student papers. If a sentence does not have a functioning independent clause somewhere within it, then it is a sentence fragment, and it doesn't matter how long or how short the sentence is. So if you look at the first of those passages there, while waiting for the train, Attila realized that he had left his briefcase at home. Most people would realize that's a problem right away. They'd see that while waiting for the train followed by a period. They would realize that's not a sentence. But then they add a bunch of descriptive phrases and a bunch of additions that they think will somehow make it better. While waiting for the train at his local station just outside Baltimore on a beautiful Tuesday morning when the sun was shining and the birds were singing, period, Attila realized that he had left his briefcase at home. Well, guess what? Both passages begin with a sentence fragment, even though the second passage is much longer. The second passage has lots of nice descriptive details. I'm glad to know that he's just outside Baltimore. I'm from there. I'm glad it's a sunny day. I'm glad the birds are singing. But grammatically, it's still a sentence fragment. It still is a problem sentence. Now, fixing sentence fragments is easy. All you need to do in many cases is replace the period with a comma. Thus, while waiting for the train, period, Attila realized that he had left his briefcase at home, period, becomes, while waiting for the train, comma, Attila realized that he had left his briefcase at home, period, and now it's grammatically correct. Strunk and White's rule number 4 is that the number of the subject determines the number of the verb. A singular subject has to have a singular verb. A plural subject has to have a plural verb. These rules apply no matter how many words there are between the subject and the verb. Otherwise, what results is a shift in number. Now, what I've provided for you once again is an example where the first example is easy and is the example that many of you watching this program would probably automatically catch. The joys of travel is many. We hear that and it just doesn't sound right. We get the sense that joys, the subject, which is plural, needs to take a plural verb, not the singular verb is. Where I see these problems more often is when a student is trying, as people should do, to be more sophisticated in their writing, to introduce more elements, make it more complex. The joys of travel, dash, seeing new places, meeting new people, learning new languages, trying new foods, dash, is many. It's great that the writer has introduced all these interesting details, but the fact is that the subject is still joys, which is plural, the verb is still is, which is singular, so both of these sentences do feature shifts in number, even though one is longer. To fix a shift in number, that too is easy. Simply make sure that the subject and verb agree in number. Thus, the joys of travel is many becomes the joys of travel are many, and guess what? It now agrees in number, and so all is well. Shifts in person is the next kind of shift subject we're going to talk about. As with shifts in number, one should try to avoid shifts in person. Now, shifts in person, you may have heard, come up in the context of any literature courses you may have taken, where first person and third person are frequent subjects of discussion. The first person is I and we. The second person is you. The third person is he, she, it, and they. Now, trying to avoid shifts in person means that one would not write, if you want to be good at grammar, one must work hard at it, because within a single sentence, the writer of the sentence is shifted between the second person, that's you at the beginning of the sentence, and the third person, one, at the end. To correct a sentence like, if you want to be good at grammar, one must work hard at it, simply unify the person of the sentence. Put the whole sentence in second or third person. If you want to be good at grammar, you must work hard at it, is correct. If one wants to be good at grammar, one must work hard at it, is also correct. Either of those is fine. As with number in person, so one should try to avoid shifts in verb tense between the present and past tense. Such shifts are frequent in conversation. We do this all the time because we're trying to convey immediacy by using the present tense, and we're trying to make clear that something happened in the past, so we use the past tense. In conversation, it's fine, but it should be avoided in formal writing. Thus, one would not write, I go to English class and then I went to history class. That would be a shift in verb tense. That would not work. To correct a sentence like, I go to English class and then I went to history class, simply put the whole sentence in either the past or the present tense. If you write, I go to English class and then I go to history class, that's fine. If you write, I went to English class and then I went to history class, that's fine too. Now, Strunk and White's rule number 5 is, a participial phrase at the beginning of a sentence must refer to the grammatical subject. Now, I know that participial phrase sounds like one of those English teacher phrases that only English teachers use, but it refers to a very simple reality. A participial phrase is simply a verb with an ing or ed ending that works like an adjective to introduce the main clause of a sentence. So that, for example, if I begin a sentence with the phrase arriving in Sanford, then that is a participial phrase. Now, your reader is going to expect that whatever comes after that introductory ing phrase will be the subject to which the ing phrase is referring. Thus, we would not write, arriving in Sanford today, the campus of Central Carolina was right before me, because the campus of Central Carolina did not arrive in Sanford today. Central Carolina was founded many years ago. The person arrived in Sanford today. So we would write, arriving in Sanford today, I saw the campus of Central Carolina right before me. Strunk and White's rule number 6 is to express coordinate ideas in similar form. Again, that sounds very complex, very English teacherish, but it refers to a very simple reality. It refers to parallelism. The term parallelism captures the idea that items in a series must be grammatically parallel. So, if I'm writing a paper about Thomas Wolfe from Asheville, my favorite North Carolina writer, I would not write, young Thomas Wolfe read widely for knowledge, understanding, and he just liked books. All of that is true, but knowledge and understanding are nouns. He just liked books is a clause, and is not grammatically parallel with what has gone before. So instead I might write, young Thomas Wolfe read widely for knowledge, understanding, and enjoyment. Or I could write, young Thomas Wolfe read widely for knowledge and understanding, and because he just liked books. Either of those would be fine. Parallelism also relates to coordinate expressions. Coordinate expressions refers to those expressions like both and, either or, not only but also. Those two must be grammatically parallel. So I would not write, I was both angry and I was displeased. If you look at what comes after the both and the and, what comes after the both is angry, an adjective. What comes after the and is I was displeased. That's an independent clause. It doesn't work. So what I would do instead is I would make them grammatically parallel. I would write, I was both angry and displeased. Now, pronoun reference is one of the most frequently recurring problems in writing. It's one of the things I find myself making comments on most often on student papers. A pronoun must always match its antecedent, that's the word the pronoun is referring to, in number. Now, with gender bias in pronoun reference, most readers can quickly see the problems of gender bias inherent in a sentence like, everyone in the class brought his books. Unless the context is specifically single gender, something like a boys' school where all the members of the faculty are male and all the students are male. Unless the context is specifically single gender, such a sentence automatically leaves out half the population, 3 billion people, and is therefore gender biased. Now, one could try to resolve the problems of gender bias in the prior sentence by replacing his with their. Everyone in the class brought their books. This is frequently a way I'll see people try to solve this problem. But the problem with such an attempted solution is that everyone, a word that makes us think of a group, is nonetheless singular in grammatical terms. We say everyone is here, not everyone are here. So, what are we to do? In the case of a sentence like this one, the best solution would be to use his or her, or to rework the sentence in such a way as to remove pronouns altogether. So you could write, everyone in the class brought his or her books. That would be grammatically correct and gender inclusive. Or you could say, everyone in the class brought the required books. That might help you avoid having to say his or her, he or she, his or her, he or she over and over again, which might be awkward in the context of your larger writing project. Now we come to the trouble with this. Not the Alfred Hitchcock movie The Trouble with Harry, but rather The Trouble with This. This example also relates to pronoun reference. Sometimes writers will use a pronoun such as this or that to refer to something in a prior sentence or clause. But the reference will be ambiguous because the pronoun this or that could refer to any one of a number of things previously referred to. Thus, in a passage like, last summer we traveled to London, Paris, and Budapest. This was fun. We are uncertain whether this refers to the entire summer trip to all 3 cities or only to the Budapest portion of the trip, the referent that is closest to the pronoun. Maybe the person had a great time in all 3 cities. They enjoyed the musical scene in London, they enjoyed the culture in Paris, and the great food in Budapest. Or maybe London was rainy, Paris was too hot, and only Budapest was fun. We don't know because that this at the beginning of the second sentence in the passage is simply not clear. Resolving the this problem, again, is quite easy. To clarify a case of unclear or ambiguous pronoun reference, make clear what a pronoun like this or that is referring to. So instead of just writing this at the beginning of the second sentence in the passage, rework it. Say, last summer we traveled to London, Paris, and Budapest. This whole summer trip was great fun. Now it's clear it's not this what anymore, it's this whole summer trip. Or, last summer we traveled to London, Paris, and Budapest. London was unbearably hot, and Paris was terribly rainy, but the Budapest portion of the trip was great fun. By the way, I would encourage you to go to Budapest. It is my favorite European city, and you will find it to be great fun. But to get back to our grammar lesson, final words. This list, please note that I began the sentence, this list, rather than by simply saying this, is not exhaustive, but it does represent many of the grammatical mistakes that one is most likely to make on a regular basis. If you can set yourself to the task of spotting these mistakes and correcting them in advance, you will be well on your way to continuing your growth and development as an effective writer. So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this mini session on grammar. My best wishes to you for continued success in your work as a critical thinker and thoughtful writer. I've included this contact information if I can be of any help to you in the future. Thanks very much for your time, and goodbye.